and haven't seen much sunshine out there. The closing song tonight will be hymn number 116, if you hold that. You know, when many people, when they start out and they become a new Christian, they start out and they're full of excitement, they're full of enthusiasm, they're full of zeal. They start out and they're so excited. They're so excited that they're a Christian now and they can proclaim Christ. And then they tell everybody. My dad is telling me when he first became a Christian, he worked at the bank, you know. He went in there, he told everybody, all his boss and everybody. And usually when people quit or left the company, they'd give him a bottle of champagne. But they gave my dad a Bible when he left. And when he was a new Christian, he told everybody. And a lot of people, when they're new Christians, everybody got to know. They tell their parents, they tell their friends, they tell their coworkers, everybody. But then they become a little bit older, you know, and they see the other people in church and they kind of quiet down and they go to their pew they go to every Sunday and they become supposedly mature in the faith. And this doesn't happen to all Christians. I'm not saying this is everybody. I just noticed in a few people. And I'm probably guilty of it myself in kind of a weird kind of way. But this is the worst thing that we can do. We should never lose our first excitement. We should never be satisfied with our work for Christ. We should never fall into the sin of satisfaction. You're probably saying the sin of satisfaction. What have they been teaching this kid back here in Bible college? Well, just hear me out on this and I'll try to show it to you. In Matthew 5, verse 48, it says, if you want to turn there, chapter 5, verse 48. It says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." Now, how does God expect us as humans to be perfect? Doesn't it say in Romans 3:23 that all have sinned? And that doesn't it mean that nobody's perfect? How does he expect us as Christians to be perfect? Well, I think he wants us to continually strive for perfection. He wants us to continually grow to get better. But like Rodney used that verse this morning, Romans 13:11. It says we continually grow closer to our salvation. Our salvation is nearer now than when we first began. That's because they grow closer and closer and closer to perfection. And you can only do that by striving for perfection. And if we quit to strive and we forget to continue to grow, then we have lost our first love. If you look around at the people in the businesses and organizations and different business ventures, you'll notice that the people that are ahead and people that are successful are those that continue and strive for better standards or for getting ahead. In every successful venture, there is someone who is always trying to improve on the best. He's always trying to do better. In every successful venture, there is one who, when he gets to the top, he jumps and reaches for the clouds. In every successful venture, there is one who, when he reaches his goals, he sets new goals. He doesn't just quit. There's one who, when he reaches his capacity, he reaches his maximum load, he makes it bigger. He gets a bigger load. There's one who's, when he's doing better than he ever has done before, it's not good enough for him. He wants to do better. In every successful venture, there is one who does not know what the word limit means. He just keeps going. In every successful venture, there's one who nobody else can top. Everybody else is jealous of him. How does he do that? How does he keep on going? Where does he get his strength? In every successful venture, there's one who, when the going gets rough, he gets rougher. In every successful venture, there's one who, when things don't go his way, he turns them around and makes them go his way. In every successful venture, there's one who never quits trying. Now, that reminds me of Thomas Edison. When he was trying to find the thing to make the electric light bulb, he tried 100 things. You know, I'd probably get discouraged after I tried 100 things. 100 things that won't work. And his lab assistant probably got discouraged. "Hey, Tom, can't you quit? There's 100 things that won't work." He goes, "That's right. We found 100 things. We don't have to try again." And so he goes on about 500 things. Boy, I'd get really tired by then. And, "Tom, once you give up, you're never going to find a light bulb." But he goes, "No. After 1,000 things," he said, "here it is. There's 1,000 things that won't work now. Only have a few more left." And so he finally found the right combination. He made the light bulb. He's a very famous inventor because he never quit trying. He worked and worked and worked until he found the right combination. He didn't give up. You know, a lot of times people give up and they only try once or twice. You have to go in with a positive attitude that say you're going to do it and you're going to like doing it and you'll get it done. If you go in with a negative attitude, say, I can't do this. It's like math, you know, I can't get this. I'm never going to get this. I don't want to do it. Mrs. Skaggs probably seen a lot of that. And but if they come in with a positive attitude and you try to work it out and keep on working at it, pretty soon it comes to you. And that's a lot of things that people don't like food. It's usually because of a negative attitude. If you go in with a positive attitude and say, well, I'm going to have to like it whether I like it or not, so you'll end up liking it. You'll get it done if you have a positive attitude. In every successful venture, there is one who, when he runs out of road, he builds more road. In every successful venture, there is one whose low points are way above everybody else's high points. In every successful venture, there is one who tops every wave of danger that comes his way. Like a ship in the ocean, they never get swamped because it always rides the waves. That's how we need to be. We need to ride over the waves. Don't let them get us down. In every successful venture, there is one who, when he gets worn out, keeps going anyway. You know these people that run these marathons and these people that practice and weightlift, they get going and they get going, and their body can't do anymore, but they make it do it anyway. There's a point where your body just will not do it, but you have to make it do it. I remember I ran a six mile thing when I was 13 years old, and we were running this thing, and pretty soon after I got the race over, your legs still want to keep on going because they're so used to in that motion. They just want to keep on going. And if you let them and you keep on pushing, you can go for a long, long way. In every successful venture, there's one who is, when he is exhausted, tired, he doesn't nap. He just keeps going and pushes himself farther. In every successful venture, there's one who does not even know the meaning of the word vacation. In every successful venture, there is one who does not have time for foolish games. He does not have time to stop. In every successful venture, there's one who is not satisfied with who he is or what he is doing. He wants to be better than he is. He always wants to do better, go faster, explore farther. You know, why do we have competitions? You ever thought about that? We have competitions so we can prove that one person is better than another. Somebody always wants to be the best. And that's how it is with businesses too. They always want to be the better ones. They want to have the customers coming to them. They want to set the standards high. If a business quit trying to improve, if it goes satisfied with where it is, pretty soon it's going to fall because other businesses around it are going to raise their standards higher, going to do a better job, and they're going to have more customers, and they're going to make more profits. If a business is satisfied with what it's doing at the moment, then it's never going to get better. It's never going to get more customers, and it's never going to get more money. And that's the way it is with Christians. If we are satisfied with what we're doing, we're never going to grow. It says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Always try to get better. Grow. Read the Bible. Never quit trying. Never be satisfied with your work as a Christian. You can never do enough. That doesn't mean we're supposed to come to church. You know, I don't see this very much, but there's a few people. You know, you come to church Sunday morning. They have their Bible, big, huge King James, you know, and they come in. They sit down in their pew. They listen, and they go home, hang out with their friends. Don't do anything for Christ. They just go back to work. Come Thursday night, go back to work Friday. You know, whatever they do Saturday, and then they come to church Sunday. That's all they live their life, and they don't grow. They just stay in the milk of the Word. But we need to grow. We need to be constantly striving for perfection. We need to be constantly striving for a greater level of intelligence of the Bible, a greater level of telling other people about Christ. We need to be constantly striving for perfection. You know, Christ was a perfect example. You know, he hung around sinners and publicans, but it was not for entertainment. It was not for his enjoyment. It was not just to be friends with them. He hung around them to up them. Sometimes today we hang around our worldly friends and we just sink right down to their level. I know I've done it sometimes. We just go right down to their level and we start, thinking dirty and stuff like that. And that's no good. When Christ hung around publicans and sinners, he hung around them to better them. He brought them up to his level. Matthew was a tax collector. He brought them up to his level. He became an apostle. And Mary of Magdalene, she was a wicked woman, and he brought her up to his level. He converted her and helped her. He didn't sink down to their level. Christ was a perfect example. He was always trying to be perfect. You think, well, Christ, the Son of God, he didn't have anything wrong, any troubles. He is tempted in every which way as we were. He did everything we did. The only thing he didn't do that we have to do is repent. He didn't do any wrong. He was perfect in every way. Just think with me for a moment of what the church could do if everybody strived for perfection. It was continually growing. We wouldn't have any trouble with getting people for the bus ministry. Oh, please let me do that. I'm trying to find something to do for Christ. Oh, can I please clean the building? I'd love to do anything for the church. Oh, would you please let me help in the school? Let me wash out the vans. Anything, People would be rushing in here trying to find something to do because all the jobs would be taken because everybody else would be out there taking them. And everybody would be working for Christ. The perfect Christian could do a lot in this world. And the world would take a lot of notice of that. If everybody was continually striving for perfection, the world would notice it. We wouldn't have to march down the street. We want our rights. We want our rights. Like those pro-abortionists and the homosexuals that kill children and have their wicked ways. We don't have to do that. We don't need that. We need to tell other people about their rights to Christ, their rights to eternal life, and their rights to salvation. And a lot of people don't know about their rights to Christ. Like Rodney was mentioned this morning, Marilyn Monroe was a success. Everybody thought of her as a great success, very popular. And you know what she wrote when she died? She wrote, "I didn't need success in this life. I needed salvation." How do you know that some of your friends that don't want salvation? Have you ever tried to talk to them about that? Maybe they put up a front. Maybe they put up a front that says, "Stay away from me, you're a Christian." But maybe deep down inside, they want salvation. How do we know that our friends don't want salvation? That's why we need to tell everybody. Paul did that. He goes, "I'm free from the blood of all men." I've told everybody. He gave up everything he had for Christ. He had a good job with the Pharisees. He had a lot of benefits probably and traveling expenses. And so he went and he persecuted Christians, and he thought he was doing right. And he did that. As soon as he found out he was doing wrong, he changed. He changed. He gave up everything. He ended up dying poor in Rome, sick, tormented. But you know what? That didn't stop him. He told his co-workers. He told everybody he knew about Christ. I don't know about you, but if I was sitting really depressed in a Roman dungeon, chained to a guard, I don't think I'd feel like telling him about Christ. But Paul did. You'd be kind of depressed. You'd think, this guy here doesn't want to hear about him. But Paul converted many of them, many among the government, because he wasn't afraid to tell about Christ. He was actually enthusiastic. He was striving for perfection. And after Peter denied Christ, he felt so terrible that he went out and preached the best sermon ever preached. 3,000 converted. He is striving for perfection. He must have heard Christ say that. Matthew 5:48. "Be ye perfect, even though as my Father in heaven is perfect." That sounds like a hard command, and it is. But the Christian life isn't always easy. There's some hard things to it. But that does not mean we need to fall away. The only reason that anybody should ever fall away is if they're too stubborn and they jump out of God's hand themselves. That's it. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Neither death, nor life, nor principalities, nor darkness, or nothing like that. Nothing can separate us. We have His armor. We're fully protected. Anything that comes our way will just bounce off unless we let it in. If we drop our armor, that's going to go right through us. that's going to come right in and get us. Christ was a success, even though he was poorer than anybody here when he died. When he was in his ministry, he said, the foxes have holes, the birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lie his head. All he had was his clothes, his life, and the Spirit of God in him. That's all he had. And when he died, his soldiers gambled for his clothes. They took his life. He gave his life for the entire world. And the Spirit of God has passed on to us. We're supposed to use it. But he gave everything he had, but he was a success. A success does not mean having money. A success does not mean having cars. A success does not mean having fame. A success is a person that influences the rest of the world for good. And Christ did that. Peter was a success. The apostles were a success. Alexander Campbell was a success. There's many successes in the world. And you may not think you're a success. They did not think that some of the great artists were not successes while they lived. They became successful after they died, and they became famous. There's many people here that may have just converted one person in their entire life. But just think, if you converted one person, his name was Archie Word, look how many people he converted. And he converted the person that converted Daryl and Rodney. And look how many people Daryl and Rodney have converted. And by one person converting one person, you can have a reaching effect so far you can't even fathom it in your own mind. You can be a success by proclaiming Christ. You know, our forefathers were a success. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, Rodney was mentioning all those people that signed the Declaration of Independence. They lost their homes, they lost their families, they lost their wives, they lost their fortunes, they lost everything they had, but they were a success. You know why they were a success? Because the United States of America is an independent nation today. That's why they're a success. Because they had a far-reaching effect. Because what they died for and what they believed in lasted. We need to live for Christ. We need to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove it is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Romans 12:1 and 2. We need to be transformed. We can't be like the world. Not conformed to the world. Not like the world in any way. You know, sure, we can have friends in the world, but as Wayne said one time, the only thing we should have contact with those friends for is to reach them for Christ. That's all. We can go out and go have fun with them, but that should be as an evangelistic outreach. You know, there's nothing wrong with having fun. Christians can have fun. A lot of people get that wrong. Oh, you guys are a bunch of Bible freaks, and all you do is go around preaching the Bible to everybody. You guys never have any fun. Well, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of fun being a Christian. It's a great life. You know, people think they come to Reno, we're going to have fun, we're going to go gamble. Boy, we're going to have so much fun. When they get back home, boy, that was a lot of fun. I lost about $500, you know. The people that really have the fun is the casino owners. They're having a great old time. You know, they're all these people coming in, spending all their money here. And people think that they're doing what they want to do, but they're actually doing what everybody else wants them to do. I'm just doing my own thing. I can spend my money where I want to spend it. And the casino goes, yeah, go right ahead. We want you to spend it here. And they think they're doing what they want to do, but they're actually doing what somebody else wants them to do. And whether you know it or not, no matter what you're doing what somebody else wants to do. You're either doing what God wants you to do, or you're doing what the devil wants you to do. So if you think about it, I'd like to do what God wants me to do. You know, the forefathers, their success was through independence. And our success is through independence with Christ. We're independent from the world. We don't have to depend on those habits that people get stuck in. Their drugs and their alcohol. Those are nasty habits. And people never benefit from those. We have independence through Christ. We're independent from the world. We're independent from despair. We're independent from sin. I'd like to turn to another verse, 2 Corinthians 13 and verse 11. This might be a little bit shorter than usual, but I don't have all those years behind me. and I don't have as much to talk about. So, 2 Corinthians 13, verse 11 says, "Finally, brethren, farewell." See, Paul's talking to the Corinthians here. He's getting to the end of the letter. He's saying goodbye. And here he says, "Be perfect. Be of good comfort. Be of one mind. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace shall be with you." Here he says, be perfect. Boy, isn't that a stiff command? Did your parents leave you home, or when you're little, your parents left you home, did they say, be perfect? No, they didn't. They knew you couldn't do that, so they just said, would you behave at least for like an hour or so while I'm gone? And so, and don't fight with your sister. And But be perfect. They would never expect that from you. But God expects us to strive for perfection. He always wants us to get better and better and try to be perfect. He wants us to strive. Never be satisfied. The sin of satisfaction. Don't be satisfied with who you are. You can be someone better than you ever thought you could be if you just try. You know, yesterday we were mixing concrete up at my grandpa's house. We're laying a sidewalk in. You know, you mix the concrete, you mix the gravel, and you mix the sand and the cement and everything. And if you get too much rocks, it's hard to smooth off the surface because those rocks keep popping up. And so you try to get the perfect mix. If you get too much water, it runs all over the place and it's hard to mix or lay in there right. And you want to try to get the perfect mix. And if you don't get enough concrete mix, then you don't get it to stay. It'll crack up real easy. And about the end of that, we ran out of concrete, so I had to fib a little bit. That I don't know how is it going to work out. I don't think it's going to be perfect, though, because we didn't strive for perfection. The next verse I'd like you to look at is 2 Corinthians 7, chapter 7, and then verse 1. It says, "Having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God." Perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Perfecting holiness. How do you perfect holiness in the fear of God? Well, you do what Acts 2:42 says. You know, they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine, in the breaking of bread, in prayer and fellowship with all the saints. They continued steadfastly in all those things. You perfect holiness by reading your Bible, by praying, by growing closer to God, by being an outreach to others, by being there to help your Christian friends. You know, a lot of things, I was thinking, we're there to criticize people, and we're there to tell them when they're doing wrong. But I think of that song, I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God, and that one verse that says, when one has a heartache, we all shed a tear. Sometimes we need to sit back and sympathize with people and be there and care for their hearts. And that's part of being perfecting in holiness. You know when to say the right word. Also in Proverbs it says, a man that can control his mouth is perfect. So that's a big, big step in becoming perfect and striving for perfection. If you can learn to control your mouth, you'll be perfect. I know I have a really hard time with that, and I know a lot of people that do. It just, something about human nature, when someone says something, you got to say something right back because you don't want to be the last one. You always have to have the last word. That's how American race is, I guess. They always have this cutlows. You try to get the last cutlow in. Nowadays, it's really, really bad in college and stuff like that. We need to strive for perfection, though. We need to continue working for perfection, striving for all holiness. And we need to get rid of the filthiness of the flesh. That's another big part. Get rid of that filthiness of the flesh and in the spirit. You know, think pure. Philippians 4:8 says, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are just, lovely, if there be any virtue or praise, think on these things. You know, I was thinking about Mr. Post said this morning, oh, he didn't see a newspaper for 2 weeks. That must have been pretty nice. Didn't have to think about nothing that bad or evil or corrupt. You know, how good it is to see the feet of those that bring good news. You always like to hear about someone's getting married or someone's going to have a baby or this person here just became a Christian. It always makes you smile. And it's always heartwarming to hear something like that. But we don't hear that all the time. We always hear about, or this person just got divorced, there's floods in Iowa, there's earthquakes in San Francisco, or something like that. There's always something bad going on. The newspaper, I think you'd have a heart attack if they ever printed something good in there. But if you open the page this morning and said there's no news, just nothing happened bad last night, I think people would just flip. They wouldn't buy the newspaper anymore. But you have the voice of evangelism, and there's several good news things going around. And those are really good to read, but they're harder to sell. They can't sell those. They have to give those away almost to get people to read them. Things that are good, things that are nice, and people should want to read, they don't want to. They only want to read the bad news. That's why they have those tabloids at the market. You ever walk by in this grocery, they want to hear something bad. Like, this person here is Di and Charles are breaking up. Oh, that's big news. And they always want to hear the bad news, but they're not striving for perfection. Perfection, we want to think about things that are good, pure, and lovely. And a lot of things, even though a movie may not be bad, does it make you think about good things, pure things, and lovely things? There's a lot of different ratings out there, and I've come to realize even PG ratings they don't make you think about good things, and there's a lot of fighting and violence. And who needs that? Christians don't need to fight and violence. They don't need to get in that karate and taekwondo and all that other stuff. They don't need that. I think I made a personal conviction of mine that when I have a home and everything, I'm not going to have a TV or anything like that, because there's too much bad. The little bit of good that does come on doesn't outweigh the bad. That's right. One of the things I was going to say, I forgot what it was though. We need to constantly work for perfection, and if you're satisfied with your life, if you're satisfied with your Christian growth, then you're sinning. If you're satisfied with where you're at, if you're satisfied with what you're doing and everything like that, and you're not doing this right. I think I had a whole bunch of things to say when I was practicing, and when I get up here and see all your faces, it just makes me go blank. I can talk a whole bunch when I have nothing to say, but when I have something important to say, I don't have anything to say at all. I'd like to go back to the point. Just think of what the church could do if we're all perfectionists, or all trying to do better. There's artists, they come and play the piano, and they play a perfect piece on the piano. You know how many years it took of practicing? 7 hours a day they practice, and finally they can play a perfect piece on the piano. Perfection doesn't just happen, And a master sculptor, he sculpts and sculpts, and a clay worker, that doesn't just happen by accident. It doesn't just happen. Evolutionary people like to think everything just happens. Well, I'd like to see them make a clay bowl without any practice perfect. That doesn't just happen. When you're a carpenter, to make a perfect joint, to cut a perfect line in the board, that takes a little bit of practice. To do it every single time, that takes a little bit of practice. And like Wayne did those clay sculptures for convention, that took a little bit of practice. He just didn't sit down one night and just do that perfect eagle sculpture. He took a little bit of practice. And don't start perfecting yourself when you turn 25 and you think that's when you start to become a Christian. Because before you know it, your life's going to be over. The older you get, the more you realize what you don't know. When I was back in high school and junior high, I knew everything. I knew what to do, what not to do. And now I find out that I don't know quite as much as I did then. And I probably find out I don't know as much as I do now when I'm a little bit older. But it seems like life just keeps going on. When I was 5 years old, Christmas just took forever to come around. I was waiting months and months for Christmas. And now it's Christmas time already. It's time to go back to school already. So where did summer go? And I remember one summer I got so bored with summer I actually started doing some work on my own without anybody asking me to. When I was younger. And everything went so slow back then. Now I don't have time to do anything. You sit down for a few minutes and just think, boy, this is a lot of time. But before you know it, your life's going to be over. And I'm not just saying that you think I'm young, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but the Bible says that, in the twinkling of an eye. And Jerry Weller back in the school, he's one of the teachers back there, he's always talking, before you know it, you're 45. He says, snap like that, you're 45. My aunt and uncle are here, and they always think, you shouldn't be driving a car, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be in college, because they remember when I was real little, And they think it's not been that long ago since I was real little. And to me, it's been a long time. It's been 18 years, you know. And to them, it's been like 2 years maybe. I don't know. Doesn't seem as long to them. That's because they're older. Not that much older, but they're older than I am, and the time doesn't seem as important as it does to me. When the older you get, the less time seems important. That's why we need to remember God while we're young. There's a lot of young people here tonight. A lot of them are friends, and I've known for a lot of years. And remember God when you're young, because it'll help you when you get old. Just think of Job. He helped the people when he was young. He helped those poor sick people. He was a crutch to the lame. He was eyes to the blind, ears to the deaf. And when he was old, and he was misery, all his children had died, and he had those boils all over his body, and his 3 friends were condemning him for being an unrighteous man. He was there. He could think back about the things that he'd done when he was young, and that comforted him. You know, a lot of these people, I go to resting homes, they were sharks when they were young, and they're always trying to get more money. And they were always trying to do this and get ahead in life and be famous. And they're in old homes, and they're old folks' homes, they're babbling, and they don't ever have a smile on their face. And then you go in there and see Mrs. Mitcher, and she usually can smile for you because she can remember what she did when she was young. She had a happy life, a good memory to look back on. You know, when you don't have that to look back on, you're really missing something. A lot of people take for granted what they can have real easy when they're young. And they don't use it rightly. Enthusiasm is another thing that doesn't just happen. It says maybe you've lost that all-consuming enthusiasm you had when you were a kid, maybe, or when you first became a Christian. Maybe you've lost that. Maybe you've lost what you once had. Maybe you've lost your first love. But you can get it back. You can get it back. You know why you can get it back? Be in church. You don't know how much it helps a person to be in church. You see all the people here, and they come up and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" You know, and they make you feel a lot better. And if you have a problem, there's someone that's sure here that notices it. And there's always someone here to care for you. And you make enthusiasm yourself. You know, if you want to have fun, you're going to have fun. If you want to have fun, you're going to have fun. If you want to have a bad time, you're going to have a bad time. That's how it is. A lot of it is to do with your attitude going into it. If you think church is boring, it's probably because your attitude, you're going to say, "Well, I'm going to go there, it's going to be boring." It's not going to be boring unless you make it boring yourself. Enthusiasm is the same way. If you don't want to have enthusiasm, if you want to be a deadbeat and just don't care about anybody, then you're not going to care about anybody. You're going to be a deadbeat. You can make yourself enthusiastic by reading the Bible, by talking to God, by having the scriptures, and by living right. That makes a person enthusiastic. By seeing other people come to Christ, looking into the face of a new Christian, that really enthuses me. There's a girl at camp that got converted, and she was really happy when she became a Christian. And that is really enthusiastic to see. It really makes you want to tell other people about Christ. It really makes you want to grow. And that's what we need to do. We need to be like the people in the businesses that want to get ahead. We need to be like those people that will nothing stop them. Nothing gets in their way. Nothing can stop a person if they've got their mind to go. It's just like a raging bull. If a raging bull is coming towards you, not much is going to stop it. You just need to get out of the way. Let them go by. If you're a Christian, you need to get that enthusiasm. You need to get that zeal. You need to get that attitude that you want to do everything you can. I want to go calling. Please let me go calling. Let me do something for you, God. Let me do something. You know, let me go somewhere. Let me tell others about Christ. Let me tell my coworkers. Tell me what to say. Maybe they're deep down inside. They're really wanting someone to say that. And you do not know until you've tried. And it may take more than once. There are several people that it takes a few more tries than once. It takes something to go bad. George Chahadi was telling me about a man he was talking to, he worked with in Country Kitchen back here. He worked in the Country Kitchen. He was a cook. He was a waiter, and this other guy was a cook. And he's talking to him. And the guy goes, sure, yeah. And the next day, that guy's father died. And he came back to George with a more serious attitude. And he said, please, can you pray with me? Please help me. And in a few months, he became a Christian. Even the seed you sow, the person that you sow it on may have a really negative influence on you. You say, oh, that really discourages me. Well, you never know what good that's going to do down the line. George Shahadi did not know if this guy was going to take seriously what he said. He did not know if this guy would ever come to church ever again. He did not know anything. But he told him about Christ, and the next guy, circumstances had it that guy came to Christ. And I was talking to a lady at the airport. She just happened to be in the layover at the same time I did. And she had experienced the death of one of her best friends. And I just happened to be there at the right time, at the right moment. I was able to share a little bit about Christ. And she said she'd try to get in touch with the Church of Christ back in Boston because that was where she was going. And I tried to help her all I could. But you never know when someone needs to talk to like that. You never know when the situation may arise. I would have never known if I was really shy and I just sat there and waited for my plane, and just didn't say a word, listened to my music or something. I would have not known and met that lady. So wherever you go, whoever you meet, whoever you talk to, give them a chance. Somebody gave you a chance. Don't you deserve a little bit more? And people say, well, I'm just young, I have all my life to live. That, as I said before, that goes by in a flash. You never know when you're going to die. There's a person, he said, I'm going to live a long time. And he died within the next hour and a half. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know he was going to die. You never know what's going to happen. You might be paralyzed for the rest of your life. Then what are you going to do? You never know what tomorrow might bring. So that's why you need to strive for perfection and always live for Christ. Always have a good attitude. And always try to be perfect. Never be satisfied with who you are. What is it? Short time. 70 years at the most. 70 years for some, a little less for others, a little bit more for others. That's all we have to live. Isn't that just a short time compared to eternity? If we live our life for Christ now, we're going to have vacation for the rest of the eternity. You don't have to worry about our vacation now. I'm on vacation. I don't need to talk about Christ now. Your vacation will come in 70 years. That may seem a long time to you, but that's pretty short compared to eternity. The consequences of living for Christ now do not at all outweigh the benefits of being with Christ for eternity. We're going to be with Him forever up there. And we're going to have everything we want. There's no tears. Down here there's a lot of crying, a lot of sadness, a lot of departures, a lot of deaths. Up there's not going to be any of that. Eternal joy, eternal bliss. It's nice to think about that every once in a while. It keeps your mind on Christ. And I like to think about hell. I don't like to think about, but it's good to think about hell because it makes you want to serve Christ more. Just think about eternal suffering down there. I think about that. It scares me to death. It scares me out of my wits. Because you think about eternal suffering, eternal fire. Every once in a while you get your hand burned in the fire, or you girls burn their heads with curling irons. That's just a short pain, That's a little bit of pain. Just imagine forever having that pain. Forever having somebody chew on your arm. Forever having worms crawling in you. Forever having pain like it. That just scares me. That makes you want to serve Christ all the more. Because I don't want to go there. And I'm sure that none of you guys do. That makes you want to do all I can for Christ because He did all He could for me. Paul did all he could for the church. Peter did all he could for the church. James did all he could for the church. Peter was crucified upside down because he did not feel worthy to be crucified in the same manner that Christ was. He did everything. He gave away his whole life. He was a fisherman. He didn't have to go. He was probably being pretty successful. He didn't have to do that. but he went and he gave his life for the church. Christ gave his life for us. Are we going to be too stubborn and selfish to give a little bit of our lives for him? Are we going to be a little bit selfish and maybe take away a year or two that could have been served for Christ? We need not to waste time. We need to serve Christ now. Now is the day of salvation. Today, if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Today is the day of the Lord. Well, tonight we're going to sing a song. And today, if you're not living for Christ, if you're not continually striving for perfection, if you're not continually striving to not be satisfied, if you're satisfied with your present life, I encourage you to think about it and come as we stand and sing a song.